Oh, hi there guys, and a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. So hopefully you're all having a great holiday season and you've also got a drink in your hand like I have here. And before we start, I just want to give a really big thank you to all of you guys out there who watch my videos, all of my patrons and supporters who have supported me over the years. Thank you so much guys for all of your support. Anyway, it's Christmas 2023. And if you remember last year, I did a video which I called Spaceinvader 1's Unraid Features Christmas Wishlist. Well, this year I thought we'd do the same. And how the video goes is basically, I've got a list of things. You know, like when you're a kid, you write a list to Santa. Some of the things you'll get, some of the things you won't. Reminds me of when I was young. I wrote a list to Santa and I asked for a flying Millennium Falcon because one of my friends at school, well, he lied to me and I believed him that his dad had a flying Millennium Falcon working off compressed air. But that's another story. Anyway, Vanessa's upstairs, it's Christmas Eve, and I'm gonna have a little sneak, I think, of a look in one of my presents. Let's have a look at this one here. If I open it really carefully, I reckon I can probably put it back together and no one will be the wiser. So, okay guys, this one's looking pretty promising. Oh, there we are. Oh, what? Wow. Oh, okay, cool. Looks like I got an i5 CPU here. That's pretty awesome. And a 4TB Crucial PCIe 4 NVMe. Wow. I could really actually do with that right now. Hang on 1 minute guys, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Now, tell me if you think this is really bad, but I'm going to try and open this because I really want to use this now. I don't want to have to wait until tomorrow. Okay, so there's the NVMe drive, and I've got this old one here. This is only a 256 gig one, and if I slip this in here, no one will be the wiser, and I can just look surprised, but I've already used it. Anyway, pretty awesome presents. Let's have another sip of my drink. Anyway, last year I seemed to get a lot of socks, so I'm not picking up any that feel soft. So let's have a look in this one. Okay, if I carefully open it again, I can put this back in, just have a little peek. Oh wow, an Intel N100M, the ASRock board here. Basically has the CPU on the board. I've wanted one of these for a while. So let's have a look inside, have a quick peek I think. Oh my lord, it's socks. Oh well. Let's beam across into the mothership and I'll clear this up later. Oh well, just like hard drives in the Unraid server, you can never have too many socks. Guess it serves me right for cheating at Christmas, hey? Anyway, let's get onto a server and have a look at Spaceinvader 1's Christmas Wishlist 2023. Okay guys, so just as we did last year, let's start on the left hand tab and work our way across and look at the features that we wish were in Unraid. Now on the dashboard, this has improved a lot since last year. One of my wishes last year was to be able to move tiles from side to side, not just up and down, and we can do that now. Unlocking the dashboard, we can move the tiles around from side to side and putting them in different places. Also, the little spanner icon here brings up tile management, and I can switch off the tiles I don't want, such as virtual machines and motherboard information for instance. Clicking apply, those disappear. Well, I've actually got a wish that on some of the tiles I wish we could choose a little bit more what we can see. Now yes, we can minimize the size of this tile here and we just see the temperature, but I'd much rather see the load than the temperature. I'd really like to be able to see just the overall load bar when this is minimized. The reason being is I'd like to be able to have my dashboard so I don't really have to scroll down to see everything. I'd like to be able to have the main things that I want to see just visible without having to scroll a page, seeing everything in one place. But I'm not going to moan. A big thank you to the Unraid team for improving the dashboard so much since it was first introduced. Now, another thing I'd really like to see on the dashboard is actually having a clock. Now, I know what you're going to say, come on Ed, don't you know what time it is? You've got your phone, on your laptop you can see the time, that kind of thing. Well, it's not actually to see the time. I think it's just important to actually know that our Unraid server time is actually set correctly and we're on the right time zone, that kind of thing. But yeah, still, you know, it's nice to have the time just to see what the time is, I guess. But for me, that wouldn't be the main reason. There's nothing worse than looking at logs and then realizing your server's set in the wrong time zone and you're trying to work out and convert when various things happened when looking at your logs. Okay, so my next feature wishes are not really about the dashboard, they're about, what would you call it, the top bar here. Now this is visible on every page, but there's a few features I'd really like to see implemented. Well, we've got the Unraid version here. I've always wished if we actually click on the Unraid version, it takes us straight through to the Update OS page. So clicking on the version brings us here. I think that would be a really cool feature. So we can just click on there and click check for updates and easily check if there's any updates. Yes, Unraid can be set to automatically check for updates, but for those of us who like to check ourselves, I think that would be a nice feature. Now, talking of clicking on things on the top here, now it says here we can click to copy the IP address of the server name. Now for me, that's a really cool thing, because when you're filling in, say, a Docker template and you need the server IP, being able to click on the name and actually getting the IP is really good. But unfortunately, this isn't working at the moment. If I paste in here, well, it hasn't actually copied anything. So I'm sure that's a little bug that will soon be fixed. So you can't really call it a feature wish. It's a feature that's obviously implemented, but for some reason isn't currently working. Okay, so another thing about the top bar here is these little icons that go across here. Now, I prefer it, personally, if we could choose which of these icons showed along the top. And for me, that's for two separate reasons. Firstly, you can see here I've got a lot of custom tabs. These are all other servers that I can click onto and go to. And this one here, Nebuchadnezzar, I've had to abbreviate so I can fit all of the tabs along here. But if I didn't have all of these, I could fit a few more. But also, I quite often go to the terminal window here. And sometimes when I'm not really paying attention, I click onto this button here and end up logging out. So being able to choose which buttons we have up here would be a feature that I'd really like. Having that could keep this much leaner, enabling the screen real estate to be used for other things. Now I'm going to go down to the end here, the notifications section here. This has been massively improved with the notifications, being able to actually get rid of them. Now the notifications have been massively improved since last year, in to do with actually getting rid of the notifications. Now there was a comment on Reddit last year about this, and this seems to have been fixed now. But also, something was mentioned about a notification center, which I thought was a really good idea. But what I didn't know, and I've only found out recently, is if we go to Tools here, we can click on Archive Notifications, and here's all of the notifications on my server since it was last rebooted. Now these are held in RAM, so rebooting the server clears them. But if we go to Settings here, and then Notification Settings, we can actually tell the server to store the notifications on the flash drive should we want to. So notifications, much improved since last year, and something I didn't know until today. Okay, so that's everything with the top bar and everything with the dashboard. So now let's move along to the main tab here. Now I know here I've only got one drive on this server, so there's not a lot to see. But I really wish we could have multiple arrays in the server. If we actually click onto one of my other servers here and have a look at that one's main tab, then here you can see again I've got one disk in the array, which is actually a flash drive, because I want to use multiple other pools in this server rather than an Unraid array. So what I'd like to see is all disk devices in Unraid being pools. And the pools can be in the form of an Unraid array, a ZFS-Z pool, a ButterFS pool, XFS, single drive, anything you want really. So if you want 3 Unraid array pools with parity, you can do it. Or if you want just one Z pool, the choice is yours. This will give us massive flexibility in Unraid, and I think it would be a great feature. And again, I'm hoping this is going to be a feature we won't be waiting that long for. Okay, now I know a lot of you guys would wish that the boot device for booting up Unraid is not a flash drive. Well, I totally disagree, to be honest. I know this is meant to be a Spaceinvader 1 wish list, but last year people put in the comments that they wish the flash drive was not the bootable device. Personally, I think booting from the flash drive has so many advantages that I wouldn't really want it any other way. Well, the reason is the operating system, well, it's very small, it's probably 300 or 400 megs, not very large at all, and it just boots into the RAM. So as soon as your server's started up, the flash drive really isn't used. And yes, your flash drive can fail, but nowadays we've got Unraid Connect, where we can manage our servers, and from there, our flash drives can get automatically backed up. Now, for those of you who've not seen Unraid Connect, it's a really awesome piece of software. You can manage all of your servers from one place. Now, Unraid Connect, more and more features will be added as time goes on. Now, one thing I think would be really cool is to be able to actually add other people's servers with their permission to your Unraid Connect dashboard. So basically, a friend sends you an invite, you accept it, and then it can come up on the tab here saying, like, my friend's servers or something, and they give you permission for what you can actually see about their server, so someone else can actually keep an eye on things as well as yourself. Now, something else in Unraid Connect under my servers on this dashboard here is kind of looping back to what we were talking about with multiple arrays and pools. If you look at Battlestar here, well, it thinks there's only 15 gigs of storage and I've only used 0.14 gigabytes of that storage. So on my wish list for Unraid Connect is the dashboard here for each server shows the total combined space on that server of the array and all of the pools together. Okay, so the flash drive's backed up with Unraid Connect, so let's go back to talking about the flash drive in Unraid and why I think it's great that the Unraid OS actually boots from one. So imagine on this server it doesn't boot from the flash drive. Where shall I have it boot from? From one of the array drives, maybe disk 1, one of the pool devices, and remember whatever disk it did boot from, we're going to have to set that in the BIOS to make sure it boots from that particular disk. That could be a bit of a problem. And also, should that disk fail and we have to move the OS to a different disk, well, it's back to the BIOS and resetting up things there again. So just for that reason alone, I'm pretty glad it boots from the flash drive. And for my next feature wish, I'm going to show you on this server here. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here, and it's in to do with Mover. So when I click onto Move here, well, Mover's running. I've got no idea how long Mover's going to take, it just tells me it's running. But also, I can't stop the array now because Mover's running. Like maybe this has been running for a long time and I just want to stop the array for some reason. It'd be really nice if we could have a button to actually force Mover to stop. Now, I realise this could probably cause some kind of problems. If a file, for instance, was halfway being moved from your cache pool to the array, well, you wouldn't want it to stop in the middle of transfer, but maybe having a button to force Mover to stop that you have to check a little checkbox, and then it stops Mover as soon as the current file is finished transferring across to the array. I think that would be pretty useful. And also, like I said, some kind of progress bar or an approximate time algorithm telling us how long that it's going to take to move. I don't even care if it's like the really bad Windows one where it goes up and down, just something to give me some kind of idea of how much stuff is left to move across. Now, I'm going to talk more about Mover when we go on to look at the Shares tab, but for now, let's pop back across to the other server. Okay, so that's everything really on the main tab. Let's now move to the Shares tab. Now, one thing I'd like to see on the Shares tab is now we've got ZFS in Unraid, I'd like to know if any of these shares are themselves a dataset or they contain a dataset. So how could a share contain a dataset? Well, remember, Unraid shares can span multiple disks, one of which might be ZFS, and one of the actual root folders for the share, it might be a dataset. So maybe if the share is just regular folders, it can be one color. If it's a pure dataset, another, and if it contains datasets, a different color again. I'd find that really useful. Or maybe have a little icon next to it like we do when the files are protected or unprotected. And maybe when we go into the actual folder, we could then see which ones of these are actually datasets and which ones of these are regular folders. Personally, I'd find that really useful. So let's go into one of the share settings now. You can see here we've got a minimum free space setting that we can set for the share, but I'd also really like to be able to set a quota for the share. So the share can't take up more than a certain amount of size on the disks. For me, that would be a really useful feature. And scrolling down, I'd really like to see some more Samba security settings, not just for the share itself, but I'd really like to see inside of the actual share to be able to set access permissions for various folders in that share, allowing access to some and denying access to others. Now let's talk about Mover. I can't really talk about it here but because I don't have a cache drive on this server. So again, let's head across to another server now. And so on this server here, we can see if I click on the primary storage, I've got various different pools here. Now what I'd really like to be able to see is more granular control with Mover. So I would like to see, for example, the secondary storage to be able to be any of the actual pools here, not just the array. So maybe I could have it move from the Skynet sector here onto the emulation pool here. And the mover action, obviously being able to move it from one pool to another, and it doesn't matter which pool it is. And also I'd like to see Mover be able to move files that are over a certain age. What I mean by that is, for example, if they haven't been accessed for say a month, then the settings in Mover in the actual share to move files older than a month onto the array or onto another pool. And also this in reverse as well. So in a secondary storage location, if a file's been accessed recently, Mover can move it over into the primary storage location. Of course, this shouldn't be by default and it should be set on individual share levels. So for this Unraid feature wish, I'd really like to see the Mover's functionality really expanded into being able to do more than what it does now. And if you guys think of any good things you'd like Mover to do, then please put it in the comments of this video. Okay, so really other than that, on the shares tab, there's not really much I can think I'd like to see. It's pretty comprehensive for what I need. So let's move on to the settings tab. Now I've said before I'd like to be able to see a row of favorite settings, ones that we can pin that we use all the time. I spoke about that in my last Spaceinvader wishlist video. So basically by having a row of favorite settings at the top, and these are generated from all of the system settings that you click, which ones you click the most often, they're just placed at the top here. But also I find that I come across to here to settings when I actually mean to go to tools. So what I think would be good on both the tools and the settings page is to probably have it tabbed. So when you go to the settings, you come to the settings first here, and then there's a tab here that says tools. And the same when you go to tools, you have it here saying tools, and then to the right settings, just in case, like me, you go to the wrong place by mistake. Yes, I know it's easy enough to kind of click on the top here, but I don't think it's as easy as being able to just tab across here. Okay, so back to the other server and onto its plugins tab. So we can see here, at the moment, I've got some plugins that need updating. But what I'd like to have is, I'd like to have a tick box, and this is the same for Docker containers as well, that says do not update this container. So when you click update all plugins, or when we look at Docker in a moment, update all containers, it doesn't do the ones that we specified not to update. Probably not so important for plugins, but it still might be useful. Okay, so onto the Docker tab now. So again, we can see a whole bunch of things that need updating. As I said earlier, it'd be nice to have like a checkbox or a toggle to disable the container from when you click update all, that it doesn't actually update that particular container that you've chose to exclude. So without that feature, had I wanted to update all of the containers except one, I'd have had to have done them all manually. Okay, talking of updates, I also mentioned this one last year, I'd really like to be able to do a Docker rollback. So basically that would involve when we update a container, it also keeps the last image as well. So yes, it would mean we'd have twice as many Docker images because we'd have quite a few orphaned images, but it'd also mean that we could roll back to the previous version of the container should something go wrong with an update. I think that could be quite useful. Okay, for my next Unraid feature wish, let's open up a Docker template. Now I'd really like to be able to add more than one network type to a container. Now this can be really useful for several reasons. For instance, this is a reverse proxy here. I might want to have a separate network for everything that's reverse proxied. But also, I might want to connect it to another network as well. Imagine this isn't a reverse proxy. Imagine this is, say, Nextcloud, for instance. Nextcloud will have a database, MariaDB or something like that. So we might want it to be connected to the reverse proxy network, and also we want it connected to the Nextcloud network that just has all the dependency containers on that one network. That way, it just keeps things a bit more separate, and in my opinion, it can be useful for a number of reasons. Okay, so now talking about custom Docker networks, I'm going to go back across the settings now and to the Docker tab here, and I'm going to toggle to advanced view. Now, what I think would be really good is to have a button here that allows us to create a custom Docker network. Now, this wasn't my idea. It was a comment on the video from last year, and I think it would be a really good idea, because otherwise to create a custom Docker network, you have to type docker network create and then the name of the network. But it'd be much nicer, especially for beginners, if you could just have a button to create it here, put the name in, and the network's created for you. Now, speaking of containers, now I wasn't really sure whether to put this on the Docker tab wish list or the apps tab wish list, so I think I'm going to put it here. But if I want to install a new container, and let's just choose any random one, let's install this container here. Now it's going to create the app data here in the app data share, and for me my app data share is actually a data set. And what would be really nice if when the app data share is actually in a data set, it creates the child folder as a data set as well. The reason being is because if we want to do snapshotting, having a separate data set for each Docker container is essential. Otherwise, if we ever want to roll something back, we're going to be rolling back the whole of the app data and all the containers within it. Okay, so moving on. Again, on the Docker page, I'd really like to see Docker Compose natively integrated into Unraid. That would be really nice. But other than that, I think that's my Docker wish list sorted out. So now onto one of my favorite sections, VMs. And I think for this section, I'm actually going to move across onto another server because I don't have a GPU for pass-through in this one. So let's head across to Baystar here. And before talking about my VM wish list, I just want to give a really big thank you to one of the Unraid devs, Simon Fairweather, who I know has been working really hard on improving the VM manager. And you may well find that a lot of things I'm talking about today here may well be coming to an Unraid server near you very soon. Now firstly, I'm going to click onto the Add VM button here, and we can see the various templates that are available for Unraid. Now what I'd really like to see is us to be able to add our own templates as well. So we can add our own custom templates for different OSs that might need slightly different settings. At the moment we can click on custom here and we can paste in XML, but really for me I don't really find that very useful. It'd be much better to be able to put in the XML here that we want and then have a button at the bottom, not to create a VM with it, but to be able to actually save the template as a user template for our own Unraid server. Anyway, let's click on to make a new VM here. One thing I really like is to be able to have more virtual CPUs. I think this should only be an advanced option. There should be maybe a toggle button here to go on to advanced. But there's many different virtual CPUs we can use in QEMU. Everything from a Pentium CPU, PowerPC, and even ARM CPUs. But for most people, they probably wouldn't use it, so I think that should be hidden unless you toggle the advanced view. Okay, so let's scroll down to graphics cards here. When we add a graphics card, obviously we add the graphics card part, but also we need to add its sound counterpart. Now, as you know, a real GPU plugs into one PCIe slot, the graphics card just plugs into one place, but if we don't do a certain setting, which is making it multifunction, by default QEMU will pass through the graphics and the sound part as two separate actual pieces of hardware. This can cause trouble with drivers because they don't really expect that, they expect it to be kind of one piece, and you generally get better performance when the graphics card is set as a multifunction. So being able to go across and toggling multifunction on and off, I think that would be a really great feature. Okay, so moving on, let's scroll down a bit more. And one thing I'd really like to be able to see is being able to actually add QEMU command line options to a VM. Now, a lot of you might not use this at all, but it can be very useful in certain VMs, such as a Mac OS VM. Without being able to do this, the Mac OS VM won't run. And in Unraid, unfortunately, when we add this manually, coming back into the Unraid VM manager and making changes, when we save it, it goes. So being able to have a little box at the bottom which can display the QEMU command line options and keep them, that would be an absolutely awesome feature, and I'm sure many of us would be really happy with that. Anyway, like I said before, don't touch that dial. All of these things might be coming very, very soon. Now, a feature I know many have been asking for a while is cloning and snapshots on VMs and being able to do it and see it from the GUI. Personally, I prefer ZFS snapshots, but I can see how this would be a great feature, and if we could see it from the actual GUI, well, that would be really awesome. Okay, so now let's move on to the Apps tab. And to be honest, I really can't think of any features I could wish for here. Community applications over the years has just come on in leaps and bounds, and it never fails to amaze me how great this program actually is. And we got a message from Andrew there wishing us Happy Christmas and a Merry Christmas to you, Andrew. And community applications, we can even see our installed applications here. This is everything installed on my server. We can see both Docker and plugins, and also previous apps. So like I said, nothing here I can think of for my Christmas wish list. So that brings us on to tools. Well, I've already spoken about tools before, so I think that brings us to the time when we can actually start wrapping things up a little bit. Now, some comments last year that I thought was a pretty good idea. Having the Unraid web GUI be mobile responsive so it will resize for the size of the screen you're looking at it with. Well, I think that would be really awesome. I'd much prefer that than any type of Unraid app. So I think that becomes my last Unraid feature Christmas wish. Anyway guys, I think that's all. I can't think of anything else. Now I'll be really interested to hear what you guys think. Which of those ideas did you like? Which didn't you like? And which should I have said that I didn't? Anyway guys, I hope you all have an excellent holiday season and a wonderful new year. And whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good. And I'll catch you in the next video.